Very cool, very, very cool. So we have our final speaker tonight, Brad, who's the host, and I'm very grateful for Brad for putting this evening together and for creating a space for us to share our story and to inspire each other. Brad and I met virtually, and he was hosting a virtual event that I produced them, and we connected. I think I was a speaker on your event. I don't know. I can't remember all the connections. But when he moved to Chicago, we finally got to meet in person, and we've been helping each other and supporting each other ever since. So he's going to share his story about how he went from buying his confidence with buying his confidence with a paycheck to now inspiring others to face their own fears and to change themselves with the power they have in their lives. So, Brad Finkeldei.
Thank you. Is this the first one? Yeah, I know. I'm the first one to use the timer. Yes. Yeah, thank you, Leanne, and thank you, everyone, for showing up. I appreciate it. So, have you ever had a moment in your life where something changed for yourself and you knew that things weren't going to be the same? Well, what I want to share tonight is that moment for me where something shifted, and it wasn't a huge moment, but in the moment it was just like a little step, but it pivoted me in the direction that I am now. And so what I want you to do is listen for yourself of like, where is that moment that you either taken or that may be coming up in your life when you step into a fear. Because what I've discovered is that when we ask for things in our life, and then something comes right at us and we're afraid to do it, that's usually the opportunity to get exactly what we want. So on the other side of fear is an opportunity of some sort. And I think in each of everybody's stories tonight, there's something in there. I don't know if I would have the cojones to stand up in front of Trump like Kira did. But, so I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I had moved there as part of my entrepreneurial journey. And I saw this guy, I was out walking my dog, I saw this guy pushing his bicycle, and he had some boxes under his arm. And they had Amazon tape. And it sparked my memory that I had a package coming in the mail. And I was a little excited, kind of that Christmas morning feeling. And so I look on my phone, and I see that it was literally just dropped off. And so I hurry back to the house, and I'm excited to see it. And when I get to the porch, there's no package. And when I get and look inside, there's no package there. And what was inside was something very important to me. In fact, it was a tiny little rubber chicken. And I'll get into that throughout my story and share more of that. And I realized in that moment that the guy that I had just passed was the guy that had stolen it. And so my heart started racing, and it started pumping, and I had to go chase this guy down. But why would anybody chase anybody down for something as stupid and ridiculous as a 1-inch rubber chicken? Like, why in the world would you do that? So to give you some context and to back the story up, 3 years before that, I was in a corporate job making really good money, but I had come to, I don't want to use the word hate, because I did like what I was doing, but I felt called to do something different, and I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I want to travel more, and I definitely didn't want to sit behind the computer for another 20 years, 30 years, or whatever that meant. And so I decided that I needed to take a risk, and I had seen this documentary called The Happy Movie, and it gets into the science of happiness. And in that moment, I realized I needed to reach out to a life coach and get some help. And so I did. And at that point in time, I had bought this I was living in Austin, Texas, and I had bought this big house and had this BMW, and I had all the things and stuff you're supposed to. But I definitely wasn't happy, and I definitely didn't like myself. And after this conversation with the life coach, she looked me in the eyes and she said, "You're not confident. You're buying all of your confidence with a big paycheck and you're trying to impress people." And it was like another gut punch moment. I think there's a theme going on tonight. And so I knew what I needed to work on, and I had always wanted to leave and do something on my own. And so I said to the universe, said to God, I'm going out and I'm going to do my own thing. And I said, 3 months later, I'm going to do this. And I drew a line in the sand and I made a commitment. And there's something funny when you make a commitment and you say you're going to do it, things start showing up in your life. Usually things that you might be afraid of to step into, but those are your opportunities. And so I started stepping into those, and about 2 weeks later, I got laid off. And it was like a perfect opportunity. That's actually the best way to do it, because they give you money to leave, and they will give you a package. Otherwise, you're left with nothing. So if you can work your way into getting fired, that's my big advice for you. So that started me and catalyzed me into going out and really going for what I wanted. And what I'm going to share now are some of the most impactful stories that I had during that journey, where I learned about committing to something, where I learned about being courageous, being able to tell people I was wrong and ask for their forgiveness, and then stepping into what does natural confidence look like. Because the person you're looking at today wouldn't even be thinking about doing something like this. This was nowhere on the radar. And so I started my entrepreneurial journey, and at that time I was doing photography, and I was in commitment mode, and everything lined up, and I got my first international gig. And I went to Guatemala, and I shot a yoga forest, and I flew my drone over the yoga forest, and it was an incredible journey, and I built their website, and it was a great first gig, and I'm very grateful for it. And I went back to Austin, Texas at the time, and then I went home to St. Louis, where I'm from. And it was Christmas time. And during that time, I realized that it'd been about 20 years since my dad passed away. And my mom's house had fallen apart. And no one had really taken care of it. We had done what we could, but people just didn't have the resources, as my brothers didn't. And so I decided again to step into commitment, and I said, screw it. I wasn't that happy in Austin. I'm moving back in with my mom, and I'm going to give her a really nice 70th birthday gift. So I moved in with her for about 9 months, and I completely rehabbed her basement, fixed up the upstairs, fixed up the outside, just gave her something so she wouldn't have to be embarrassed to have her grandkids or her kids over, and she could have a Christmas or birthday or whatever she wanted to do. It's none of my business, I don't care, but she wouldn't be embarrassed. And during that time, I really learned what it took to be committed to something, because it took all of this effort. It took me stepping into becoming a leader and wrangling my brothers and the neighbors and contractors and people I didn't know how to really deal with. And just inside of I don't know how to do the plumbing or electrical, and I don't want to kill myself, and I definitely want this to be done well, so I need to get someone else to do this, because I'm the type of guy that wants to do everything myself. And I definitely did a lot of the work myself from YouTube and learned, so you can do a lot yourself, but it's a lot easier with team. And so during that process, I learned about life coaching, and that you can have that as a business. And so I went out and got my certification, and then the next thing you're supposed to do as a coach is you're supposed to write your first book. And so then I wrote my first book, wrote it in 100 days, and then the next step after that in the so-called plan is you're supposed to be a speaker. So I got a speaking gig down in Ecuador, and I went with 20 other speakers, and we went down there on not a mission trip, but we did bring clean water filters to 2 communities in the Amazon rainforest. If you ever get a chance to go there, do it. It's incredible. It's awesome. And then we spoke at the university down there. We all shared a message of inspiring the communities down there to do something that to leave them with inspiration. Because even though we brought clean water filters, they couldn't get those down there. And it was something very important to them. But one of the men that was with us, Leanne, can you grab my chicken? One of the men that was with us was a shaman. And his totem animal was a chicken. And so he carried around, you can throw him up here. You can throw him up here. He's not going to die. He's a rubber chicken. So this is Charlie. And he carried around a rubber chicken just like this. And he empowered people to step into their fears and to quit being chickens and do what they really want in their life. And then he would hand them a little tiny rubber chicken to remind them and have in their life something that was a token, like when they see it, okay, maybe now it's time for me to step up and to face this fear so I can see the opportunity on the other side. And so he left that with me, and I felt really like, okay, cool, like, I have something, and I was touched by it. And then, the rest of the trip happened. And I want to share a very short story inside of commitment and finishing something all the way. And how at the darkest times when you're about to finish something, you want to quit. So we had gone to the Andes Mountains, and we had gone to deliver clean water filters to them. And their community had said to us, oh, we're going to do this ceremony. It'll be at the bottom of the hill. It'll take a few minutes to get down there, and then we'll do the ceremony, and then we'll come back up. Well, what they didn't tell us, what wasn't communicated, was that this was a mountain, and there were switchbacks to get down to their ceremonious water grounds, which was a raging river. And so it didn't take 10 minutes for us non-natives there to get down. It took like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we had everybody ranging in age and size, and it was a difficult trip down for some people. And we get down there, and we do the ceremony, and then we're like, oh, thank God, no one died. And now we have to turn around and go back up. And going back up was ironic, because what ended up happening is we had a man that was almost 300 pounds. He was like 6'7", just a big, big man. And he had to take 10 steps and then stop. And then 10 steps and stop. What ended up happening was the little girls in the community had to go get buckets of water from their village, bring it back down, and then we had to use our water filters to clean them because it wasn't clean water, to save our lives. And it was another 2 hours back up this treacherous thing, and people got confused and lost, and I was one of those people lost. And right before the end, I had walked up to a house, and I didn't know what to say. There was no one there. It was just chickens and dogs, no one else around. We're 2 hours away from anywhere. But I know I'm close to the finish line, but I want to give up and I want to quit. I had nowhere else to turn. I didn't know Spanish. I still don't. I knew one word. I knew hola. And so I step out to the edge of the kind of like the mountain edge, and I just start screaming, hola! In a very desperate voice. And a very kind man said something back in Spanish. I don't know what he said. But he could tell I was desperate and needed help. And he came over, and he took me another 10, 20 yards to the finish, to the top. And then I met up with the community. And I felt it in that moment. It's like, wow, this is what it's like to be an entrepreneur, to go after a big goal. It's like you're about 90% of the way, and that's when you want to quit. And that's when the time you need to ask for help. And it just really hit me. I was like, wow, I should ask for help more. And maybe I'll go a little further. So that's my story about commitment. My next story is about courage and about being able to say you're wrong. So I was this is back in Portland, and I was living with a roommate. And when I moved in, she described that she was an introvert. She didn't talk very much, and she was quiet. And I said, okay, well, I get that. And this is all internal dialogue, and I now get that I was being pretty arrogant about it. And I got that I thought I knew what an introvert was. they don't go out much, they don't talk much, maybe they don't have many friends, or I don't know. This was all the internal dialogue. And when I was living with her, I would come down the stairs and I would say good morning or hi or whatever, and she wouldn't respond. And I would kind of get a little pissed of like, well, you're supposed to say hi to people, like it's morning, like that's how I was raised. What's wrong with you? And that's what I would say. I wouldn't say that to her, but that's what I would say to myself. And I'd be like, oh, she's got to go out and get friends. She's got to go out and network. She's got to do this and she's got to do that. And I was trying to fix her, like a typical guy. And this went on for months. And I never said anything. I just withheld this in. And then one morning, I was on a coaching call with my business coach. And I was sharing a story about my niece, and my niece was afraid of spiders. And my business coach just stopped and yelled at me, and she's like, stop making your niece wrong for being herself. You have no clue what it's like to be her. And it was like she punched me in my ego and like kind of shattered it. And like I finally got something. And so a few more months of coaching went on, and I finally walked down the stairs, and everything was kind of like coming to this moment. And I walked down the stairs, and I walked in the kitchen, and it just landed with me that I only know my experience in life, like my experience. Like I have no clue what it's like to be anybody else here. Like no clue at all. And what I got then was, crap, I need to go talk to her. I need to go apologize because I've been making her wrong, and that hasn't led to any openings in our friendship or being roommates. And so I walked into the other room, and I said, I need to share something with you. And so what I did was I said, I've been making you wrong for being who you are. And what that ended up doing was open up a conversation. And what she shared with me was really vulnerable, and it opened up a connection between us. She shared that she had been raped and molested by her brother in that house when she was a kid. And then in order to survive as a child, she went into imagination land. And that's the only thing she knew how to do. And when she went outside in public, it took all of her energy, but you would think she's a powerhouse, you would think no different than Kira. I mean, she's a really strong woman. But as soon as she closes the doors to get inside, whoosh, she goes right back into imagination land. And that's just who she is. And there's nothing wrong with her. And so I really got that. And then what that opened up was now me knowing and apologizing for being wrong and making her wrong for who she was, is that opened up our relationship. And ever since that moment, we've been able to talk more and be more open. And I obviously don't live in Portland anymore, but there's a connection there. And we now know each other better. And so that's my story of really stepping up and being courageous and admitting when you're wrong about something, even if it's just an internal dialogue. So that old adage of never judge a book by its cover, it's probably true. And so my last story of stepping into what your natural confidence is kind of all of these wrapped up and all these little stories that I learned along the way. So if you can imagine the word strong vertically, S-T-R-O-N-G, the S and the T are for your strengths and triumphs in your life. And we forget so much how much stuff we've done, that if we can keep those present in our life and remind us, put them on the mirror, share them with other people, of all the little things, it will give us more confidence to do the things that we're scared to do in the present. When I go back to my mom's house and I sit in that basement, it's a great feeling to know that I did that, Kathy, when you look at your son, like I'm sure you get that too, and I don't want to rattle off all of Kira's accomplishments, but I'm sure you get that too when there's those moments that remind you of like where you were from to where you are now. And same thing for Leanne, like all those moments. Where are you at? Oh, there you are. It just reminds you of like all the hard work that came in and did it. And the more you can bring those present in your life, just by little reminders of like what you actually did, it just gives you more encouragement naturally. The R stands for releasing regrets and shames in your life, and like letting go of all the things that you might not be ashamed of, or things that you may have done in your past that you wouldn't do again. There's a quote by Les Brown that says, if you would never do it again, you're convicting an innocent person.
Wait, you say that again?
If you'd never do it again, you're convicting an innocent person. And it's all that internal dialogue that just keeps going and going and going, because there's something in your past that you keep bringing forward that isn't true anymore, because you already learned the lesson. The O in the strong is about observing yourself. And I learned this I've surrounded myself with a bunch of powerful women, and I've learned a lot of really valuable lessons. And one of, this was in Portland, she shared with me a breakthrough in her own body image. And I had beaten myself up for I was a husky kid, and had love handles, and was fat, and like, I just really, that internal dialogue in my head continued, and I was ashamed of who I was. I always compared myself to a good buddy of mine who was just one of those skinny, naturally fit guys that he didn't have to do anything and he looked good. And, but I wasn't that. I was the chunky kid. You know, I was Chunk from, what's the name of that movie, Goonies? Yeah, the Truffle Shuffle. And so I had worked really hard to get where I'm at today, but there's still that internal dialogue, or there was. And the exercise that she shared with me was really powerful. She said, stand in front of a mirror. Don't do this in public. Stand in front of a mirror naked until you accept yourself for who you are. And I started doing that and really just observing who I was in my body. And all the internal dialogue started to dissipate and go away. And I just started realizing, like, wow, it's just all internal. I don't have to beat myself up for having love handles, because it doesn't really matter, you know? If it really matters, you can always turn off the lights, right? So that was a really powerful story and a really powerful exercise for me, and I got a lot of natural confidence just about observing myself and doing that exercise until you can look at yourself in the eyes and accept yourself. The N in strong is when you're nervous, go into service. This is especially for speakers and people who want to make a difference. Is when you're nervous, you're internalizing what everybody else might be thinking about you. And if you can project yourself and make about what you're talking about them and the difference you're going to make, or whatever you're up to, is to focus on the other person. All of that starts to dissipate, and all your energy just goes on making a difference for you and you and you and you and whoever it is, and you don't have to worry about yourself. You know, make sure your fly's up, but that's about it. And the G in this is all about going to be yourself. What I found for myself is when I just be myself, that's when people admire me the most, that's when people give me the most recognition, and they admire the things that I don't really see that much, but they do, and they notice something in it. And if you look at Lady Gaga or any of the big superstars, it's because they're weird, unique, quirky qualities that they embrace the hell out of. And whatever that is for you, my request is you embrace that. And so all of these stories have led up to basically a moment after I moved here to Chicago of discovering who I am. And I moved up to Chicago on faith. My dog was dying of cancer, and I didn't know where to go, and I just got down on my knees, and my entrepreneurial journey wasn't going the way that I thought it was going to go. And I kept hearing the words Chicago, and I'm like, no, it's cold. I'm supposed to be on the beach.
Miami.
Yeah, Miami. And I asked again, and I heard Chicago, and I'm like, okay, I'll go to Chicago. So I moved to Chicago, and this was this year. And I'm out running at about 6:30 in the morning, and I'm asking myself the question, who am I? And something just came through me, and I said out loud, I'm a speaker. And then the weirdest thing happened after that. I burst into tears. I was like, why am I crying? I just asked myself a question, who am I? And what I got in that moment is I was withholding my whole life that I had a message that I wanted to get out and I wanted to share. And that it finally started to come out. And ever since that moment, I've been on the path to become a speaker. And I fly out tomorrow for my first paid gig in Las Vegas. And so my ask of you is to look inside yourself of what is that whatever that fear is for you, what's on the other side. You probably don't know, but you're probably going to like the result once you actually step through it. You might not like the process. No, you're probably not going to like the process. To do an Ironman or to start your own business or to go out on a limb and ask that person out that you really want to, whatever that is, there's something on the other side that you might actually really want. And so to get back to the story of the rubber chicken, is that so I was chasing this guy down. Well, first I grabbed my attack dog, attack liquor, and she joined me at hand. And I ran after the guy, and I caught up to him, and I said, "Hey, I think you got my package." And he said, "No, I don't." And I was like, "Yeah, you do." And I'm like, I looked and there was my package. And I was expecting about 100 of these little things that I paid $30 for. I grabbed the package from him and I rip it open. I was still excited to see what I had. I wanted to. I opened it up and there was one rubber chicken, like 1 inch that I paid. I just got ripped off. And then this guy stole from me. That sucks. And then I looked at the guy and everything switched. And I realized something wasn't right for him. And it switched from a moment of confrontation to a moment of compassion. And I said, "What's going on in your life that you're stealing random packages off people's porches? Like, what's going on?" And he opened up to me. And he shared with me that 4 people had died in his life that year, and that he was strung out on drugs, his mom was strung out, his girlfriend was strung out, and that they had gone homeless, and that the only thing they knew to get by was to steal packages. And so I used my coaching, to do what I could in the moment to assist him. And then I reached into my wallet and I gave him the last $6 that I had on me. And then I said, "Here's my business card, call me." And it was in that moment that I got my own confidence back and realized that I could make a difference when I shut up and I listen for other people and what's going on for them. And so now I'm on a mission to give away 10,000 tiny rubber chickens and to empower and inspire other people to share their stories, because whatever story it is you have, there's someone else that has gone through probably something similar, and they need to hear your story to encourage them. You don't have to get up on stage, but maybe it's something you share with a family member or a friend that could make a difference for them. And so, Leanne, would you bring me my big bag of rubber chickens so I can give everybody? Not the whole. Yeah, you can bring it up. So I'm gonna give. Kira, would you help me out too?
My mother taught me never to open anyone's bag.
Oh.
And why did she need to?
All right.
Hey.
So I'm gonna hand these out. Would you just hand some of these out? And then I've got some. Oh yeah, I've got some here. Yeah. So I'll get over on that side. Fred, there you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Boop, boop. On. So like me, like whenever you see this, it's a reminder for you to step into your fears, whatever that means for you. You know, whatever moment, if it's a conversation, or if it's a new big project, or if it's a breakup, or if it's an ask out, or if it's marriage, or divorce, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, you know, if there's a fear there, you know, my request is you step into it. And thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate you all for just being here. It's inspiring me. Thank you. Okay, so we've got just a few minutes left. Kathy and Leanne and Kira, does anybody have any questions for any of us? Yes, you can come up, Kira. You're trying to make sure we're doing it right. So does it? Yes.
So just for Leanne, I'd love to know mentally and physically what you did different between the first and the second Ironman that really made the difference.
It's a great question. So physically, I rode a lot more miles. Since I missed the bike cutoffs, I knew the bike was an issue for me, and I rode a lot more hills. So it's a very hilly course, and so I mean, I cried a lot this summer. I really pushed myself to do more miles. The physical part I thought was easy. The first time what went wrong for me was nutrition. So I also focus on nutrition. I have a nervous stomach on race morning, and so usually I can kind of get over it in a shorter race. And what I learned was just trying to figure out what I could eat. I tried like donuts, I tried different sandwiches, peanut butter, I tried whatever. I came to sausage McMuffin with egg. It just works for me. The mental thing was the biggest thing for me. I'm a very positive person. I'm a very much about visualization. And so I kept visualizing the perfect race. I kept visualizing the finish line. I kept visualizing the bike finish. What I didn't visualize was what could go wrong. And I didn't do that because I kept thinking, well, I don't want to have a file. I don't want to know the bike cutoff. I kept saying it. I don't want to know the bike cutoff because I'm not going to need to know it. And the truth is, you need to know that because you need to have a file for what could go wrong. And so this time I would, before every race, okay, what happens if my goggles get kicked off in the swim? I'll do this. What happens if I can't eat? I'll do this. What happens if I get a flat tire? I'll do this. I literally went through everything that could go wrong to create a file for what I would do so that if it did go wrong, because it will, it's a 17-hour day, something was going to go wrong. So I created a file that I would know what to do so that I could just pull that out if it happened. Is that answer? Cool. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay. So for Kira,